It appears by mentioning in 3 videos explicitly that I am in fact ethnically Jewish, I have become the resident Jew of the micro-commentary community. And you know what? I can accept that. I've had quite a few people coming to me saying, hello, is this thing anti-Semitic or is that thing anti-Semitic? And my answer to most of them is, no, we've been through worse. A few people have come to me and asked me the question, what do you think about this analysis of Attack on Titan being anti-Semitic? And I was like, huh? Apparently some people have problems with the Attack on Titan manga and anime because it's anti-Semitic. I've watched the anime up until the most recent episode. I don't understand where this is coming from. Well, actually I do have an idea, but I'll go on to that shortly. But before I go into anything and as to why people think it's anti-Semitic, I have to tell you the history of Attack on Titan, and I'm going to give you a super brief, probably an accurate recap of the history of Attack on Titan. 2,000 years ago, some chick called Ymir makes a pact with the devil, or is gifted by the gods a power to turn into a ginormous, bloody titan. It really depends who you're talking to. Some people think that she was gifted this power by the gods, and other people think she made a pact with the devil. But we're going to get onto that later, because that, my friends, is something called propaganda. And we're going to get into a really wishy-washy, basic explanation of the Titans now. When Ymir died 13 years after she either was given the gift or made the pact, her soul was split into 9. She was an Eldian, which we could describe as an ethnicity of sort, if we're going to go into the comparisons we're going to talk about later. These shards of her soul, if you will, became the 9 Titans, and would later be inherited by only Eldians. So an Eldian would be born with the ability to turn into a Titan, one of the 9. So there's only 9 of them, so 9 Eldians. According to the Marlians, which is where the Eldians once did live in Mali, the 9 Titans caused havoc and raged the world into war, and eventually the Marlians managed to triumphantly beat them down in all good righteousness. King Fritz, who was the king of the Eldians, took a group of his people away to an island called Paradise Island and sealed them in a wall made of titans. So like lots of big titans all stood around in massive circles, and then a wall was like built around them. And he threatened that if Mali ever dared attack Paradise Island, then he would cause the titans to wake up and cause a rumbling across the world. Some Eldians were left in Mali, and this is where we're going to get into some dark stuff. They were forced to wear armbands identifying them as Eldians, forced to work in the military, and over the course of the previously mentioned war, Mali did manage to gain control of some of the Titans, aka managed to get the very guilty, brainwashed Eldians who thought they were like devil scum for the sins of their ancestors to work with them. This is where I have to kind of go onto a segue and bring in Titan spinal fluid. Injecting an Eldian with Titan spinal fluid will turn them into a pure Titan, which is like a massive raging beast with no intellect or no ability to communicate and just wants to eat humans for no reason. I have to bring this up for 2 reasons. The first is the way that the 9 Titans that do hold intellect and are extremely powerful are inherited. Another Eldian has to be injected with spinal fluid and become just a regular-ass Titan, and then the regular-ass Titan has to eat the intellectual one of the 9 Titans to inherit their power. Once a pure Titan has eaten somebody who holds one of the 9 while in their Titan form, they inherit that power and they can use it to fight. And what Mali does is they enter children into training programs, the warrior program, and those who achieve like the highest marks or prove themselves to be the best warrior have the honor of inheriting the titan of another, and it's like an honorary thing that they get to do, because if they inherit the power of the titan and fight for Marley, they can become an honorary Marleyan, which is kind of a raw deal. They're manipulated into thinking that this is some grand honor, when really they're fighting for the people who subjugate them and put them in ghettos and will only live for 13 years after they inherit it. Much like Ymir only lived for 13 years after being granted the gift to turn into a titan, anyone who inherits one of the 9 will only live for 13 years afterwards. If they die without being eaten or having their power passed on, then the titan that they held will randomly go to just any Eldian, which is a problem for Marley and why they have the warrior program. Because if any Eldian can get it, then those in Paradise Island could possibly inherit the titan. So it's a way of keeping control over the Eldians, making sure they still have an arsenal of 7 titans under their belt, because otherwise then all hell could break loose. So by implementing the warrior system to control these people, after manipulating them and guilt-tripping them into believing that they're in the ghettos because they deserve it from the sins of their ancestors, while also giving Eldians a slight ray of hope that by inheriting this power, they can redeem themselves of their ancestors' sins. That way they can keep control of the 7 titans that they have. The second reason that I mentioned spinal fluid is because any Eldians who are convicted of a crime or forced to confess to a crime, such as conspiring against the state of Mali or trying to lead a revolt against Mali, are taken to the border of Paradise Island, injected with spinal fluid, and then kicked off the edge. Upon impact, they become pure titans and are forced to wander around the perimeter of Paradise Island for the foreseeable future. I think that's the basic understanding you need to get into the criticisms that I'm about to levy. There are Marleyans who believe that Eldians are scum of the earth, who wiped a load of countries out because they had the Titans, and therefore subjugate existing Eldians in their own country and nation because of that. And then you have the Eldians who are subjugated and placed in ghettos and given identifying armbands and told that they are terrible. So some people are saying it's anti-Semitic, and I can't quite put my finger on it. People have sent me tweets and screenshots, and I can't quite get it, because some people are saying that the Eldians are being marketed as members of a certain 1940s political party, and also in Mali there are Zeppelins, and also armbands, and therefore Attack on Titan is pro-1940s political party. Okay. I've said before that I have a problem with people taking real-life events or real-life political parties and saying, oh, that's kind of like 1940s Germany. These people are like 1940s Germany. I have an entire video on that I will link down below and in the cards somewhere, because I think it completely waters down what exactly happened in World War II, and it's just a way of trying to trivialize Jewish trauma that actually happened and equate it to real-life events that absolutely have no bearing on it and completely ignores 2,000 years worth of anti-Semitism that led to 1940s Germany. When it comes to narrative things, I have no problem. They aren't trying to say that this is a real thing that is exactly like this thing, and therefore, what exactly is happening to these fictional characters are exactly the same thing as what happened to the Jews. Having a fictitious story take inspiration from a very specific point in history is not the same thing as calling a former US president a certain member of a 1940s political party. It's not the same thing. It's taking inspiration from an event and a series of events and a certain ideology. It doesn't impact Jews because it's fictional and metaphorical. Taking certain aspects and themes and putting it in a fictitious environment doesn't water down or trivialize real life events. And if anything, I see the Eldians being the parallel to the Jews in this story. I'm not seeing how the Malians are being portrayed as the sympathetic group. It's the Eldians that are, and I'll explain why. Firstly, the Eldians of Paradise Island had to leave their home for their own safety, much like when the Roman Empire invaded Israel and forced the Jews out 2,000 years ago. I can link a video in the cards, a collab that I did with Jesse Quinn, and they explain the history of Israel, because, by the way, Israel is actually 2,000 years old. The state and the government of Israel is less than a century old, but the concept, the land, the ancestral home is much older than that. So when you hear somebody say that they're Israeli, maybe consider the fact that they don't actually support a corrupt government. Second, the people of Paradise Island, the Eldians, maintained pacifism for a very long time, and I will link some sources and put some screenshots up that around the time the Jews were originally in Israel, it's shown that they didn't attack and didn't invade, and they lived quite peacefully. Eldians who still resided in Mali after some left to go to Paradise Island were forced to live in ghettos and wear armbands. Some Jews did in fact remain within Israel, but they weren't treated so good, and I'm just going to say that. And of course, later down the line in history, Jews would be forced to wear armbands and live in ghettos. Eldians and those of Paradise Island had to withstand horrific propaganda that painted them as devil, people, and monsters. Jews had to deal with the myth that they yeeted Jesus. Myths surrounding SRA and Jews circulated as of the 1100s, which would become printed anti-Semitic propaganda in the 15th century, and then, of course, we have plenty of anti-Semitic propaganda leading up to World War II. Eldians are forced to become monsters and eventually attack other Eldians when the wall is broken in. Jews are made out to be monsters and have often been pitted against other Jews for sake of tokenism, or to try and prove that, look, Jews infight among themselves. They even fight among themselves. How terrible they are. Jews are prodded and poked by individuals, groups, and the media, and when we retaliate, we're somehow the bad guy. Some Eldians, or members of Paradise Island, have Hebrew names. Levi Ackerman, as I said in my previous video, is essentially a Jewy McJew name. And no, while his nationality has never been stated explicitly, we do know that he's not Asian, because Mikasa is noted to be the last Oriental, their words, not mine. It's also rather interesting that the time frame, 2,000 years ago, is when Ymir got the gift of the Titans, is the same as 2,000 years of anti-Semitic rhetoric. It could be argued that with Ymir's actions, that started the entire chain of events that would lead to anti-Eldian propaganda, much like the Roman Empire invading Israel would start a chain of anti-Semitic propaganda. Both of these events happened 2,000 years ago. So I'm far more inclined to believe, with everything that I've mentioned, that the Eldians, if there is a parallel between real life and the SNK universe, the Attack on Titan universe, that the Jews are supposed to be mirrored in the Eldians. And that the Eldians, whether remaining in Mali or having migrated to Paradise Island, are the sympathetic group. So overall, do I think that Attack on Titan is anti-Semitic? No. Have I seen any proof that the author of Attack on Titan is anti-Semitic? No. Can't comment on anything that he said about the Korean War because I don't know diddly squat about the Korean War, but from my point of view, he's not anti-Semitic, and the people telling me that they're worried to watch Attack on Titan because they don't want to be called anti-Semitic, just watch Attack on Titan. Like, literally, we've dealt with worse, and this, in my interpretation and explanation, makes Attack on Titan not anti-Semitic. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.